Hey, DTA Nation, with the spring season right around the corner, that means it's time to start planning those grad parties. Old Southern Barbecue has great catering options for your senior. You can go with the barbecue staples like wings, ribs, or barbecue sandwich sliders, but they even have an incredible mac and cheese bar option as well. Congrats to all the seniors from DTA and OSB as you head into the final chapter, and go to oldsoutherncatering.com to get your grad party planning underway. And make sure to tell them that DTA sent you. Are you looking for a dedicated partner for your lacrosse needs? ES Lacrosse has got you covered. If you're brand new to the game, a seasoned vet, or a dedicated lacrosse parent, ES Lacrosse is the go-to partner for Minnesota Lacrosse and DTA Nation. Whether you need new gear, a restringing of your current setup, custom uniforms or apparel for your team, or one of their awesome starter sets for your brand new lacrosse player, the selection, expertise, and service at ES Lacrosse is unmatched. You can visit them in store at one of their 3 metro locations in Woodbury, Chanhassen, and Vadnais Heights, or visit them online at eslacrosse.com.
And welcome to Down the Alley. This is PMAC.
And Ted T.S. Spirides.
And welcome to Section 5 preview episode. We just actually wrapped up with our interviews. Now recording the intro. A couple of great interviews. Really excited to dive into both the boys and the girls side of this section. But before that, what's going on in the lacrosse world? Have you been watching a lot of college lacrosse? How are your Orange doing?
I haven't been watching as much as I had hoped. I don't know why. It's been like weird timing on things. Same old story with Syracuse. I think when we talked about this on the I don't know, it was like section 1 at one of the beginning episodes, we're talking about all this hype, they're like preseason number 2, they always get put up there. It's the same old story, it's like they dominate bad teams because they're really skilled, but it like there's no rhyme or reason to what they're doing. It's just like all over the place. And I actually still feel strongly about their defense. I feel like their defense has had to put up with a lot of shit like the last couple of weeks. Kind of kept them in it. But last week, the last game as of this recording, Harvard, which I think is an up and coming team this year. Crazy game. Like I kind of saw parts of it. Like Syracuse was like up like 5-0 early.
Yeah.
And Harvard just kind of chipped away at it, and that's a testament to Jerry Byrne and his coaching, and they're a tough team. And yeah, I'll believe when I see them beat like a legitimate team. Kind of full play a full 60 minutes and a complete game. Well, besides the point though, they still are really fun to watch as like an offensive coach. They do a lot of cool things, so at least I can take away some fun ideas of being like, okay, that's an interesting way to do that, or just as a fan to be like, all right, that was a cool play or a highlight. A lot of highlights. Unfortunately, not a lot of W's.
They're incredible to watch, and the skill is very impressive. But kind of to your point, or I think what you're getting at, are they built to win when it matters?
I don't think so. I really don't. I think this past game at least, I know their starting goalie had a bad day. He just was kind of getting shelled, and then they yanked him and put the backup in, and then that
And
didn't.
he got shelled.
He got shelled too. So like, that could have just been a weird one. But and I actually, maybe I'm being a little harsh. Like the Maryland game was a really good game. Like that was a competitive game, and Maryland's a great team at home. It's not an easy game to go win on the road, and like it was a pretty competitive game. So, we'll see. But as a coach watching, I always kind of feel like something's missing. Like they're just not quite ready for what's gonna happen. But like when the momentum's there, when they're feeling it, like it's just a wave of skill and like craziness. But like when things get a little dicey, there's not like I don't even know what the word would be. I don't want to say they're not prepared, but like,
It's like they don't have like a structure to fall back on. Like when the table's hot and
yeah,
the cards are coming, no one can stop them. I don't care who they're playing, but can they do that over a whole game against a Duke or a Maryland
yeah.
or if they can one game in a playoff, can they do it for 5 games to get through the whole playoff situation to a Final Four, to a through a championship?
That's a really great analogy. Like they don't have a structure to fall back on. I think that's an interesting point of like with with Syracuse, you're right. It does seem like when the table's hot, it's great. And then when it turns into like, uh-oh, like things are kind of going the other way, they still just play high risk lacrosse and then like it kind of compounds. So I don't know. Interesting thought there for sure.
I saw Old Southern Barbecue just released. I guess I don't know if it was a new release or you and Katie just tried their cake. What is it a new release or what's the situation with this cake?
Yeah, it was something they released for Valentine's Day. Um and I think they're continuing it. I must have got good feedback or want to continue to sell it. Um I, honestly, yeah, we did a review. It's on our Instagram. My review's on TikTok on our TikTok account. Katie's is on Instagram. For somebody who's like just a standard cake is not necessarily my go-to first choice. Like I thought it was really good. Like I wouldn't turn it away. I maybe wouldn't like go and order it every time, but like if somebody got it, I'd be eating a bite. I really liked it. Katie, who's and you'll see in her review, she's definitely more of a red velvet, I would say, connoisseur. Um, she really liked it. So she had high praise for it. And honestly, a really good job for, a barbecue joint to do something on the bakery side. So, shout out to them. It's been kind of like, honestly, from a lacrosse perspective, most of my time has been geared towards sort of preseason planning for the high school season.
Yeah.
Like we,
Yeah, there's a lot of this time of year for the high school coaches and the youth directors. There's a lot of meetings going on. There's a lot of board meetings. There's a lot of coaches meetings. There's a lot of spring coaches meetings with ADs. It's just I feel like I'm in 2 meetings every week
yeah,
right now.
yeah, and like as we've discussed with high school lacrosse in Minnesota, like we hit the ground running. You have a couple days of tryouts. You got to get pictures taken care of, and then you have like 3 or 4 practices. Then you have your first game.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of time. Like if you're a coaching staff that's going, if you show up on April 1 and you're like, all right, like what should we be doing this year? Like let's meet. And you're not doing that in like February, March. You're definitely behind the 8 ball. Maybe some staffs can do that. They have the time to do that. But I feel like now is the time when I mean, most of the people I talk to, you and it sounds like Brandon in our last interview,
Yeah.
like a lot of staffs are starting to get together, being like, all right, like what does this season look like? Obviously there's things that you are not negotiable. We're doing this again this year, but what are we changing? What's going to look different? What's everybody's kind of role? Are we all doing the same thing? Do we want to switch things up? So, it's been a lot of that from a lacrosse perspective. I've been starting to go back through some old film from last year just to get a head start on more personnel, I guess, like specific players that I know are coming back from other teams to like kind of have that ready to go because then when you scout like like you're doing your scout for the team before your game, like you can kind of cross reference and be like, okay, that looks a little different than what they did last year, or no, there's a trend there, or yes, this kid's still lefty, or
Yeah.
like whatever. So that's been most of my lacrosse stuff, outside of just the training and club stuff.
Yeah, this weekend, another lacrosse kind of travel trip. That's not coaching. A few weeks ago, I went to Marquette to watch a game. This weekend, Katie and I are going out to Michigan, first time since I graduated. Um, from Detroit. So going out there, going to see my sister play, watch some college lacrosse, going to Greektown, because I married into the Greek mafia. So we're going to check out some Greek situations. Um, it's a vibe, at least it was back in the day when I was there. So, it's a vibe in Greektown in Michigan or in Detroit. So, excited to go back and check, see my sister play.
Yeah, that'll be good. That'll be a good trip.
Other than that, I think we should kick it over to our guests, two great guests tonight. Um, Breaking down, boys section five, girls section five, two great sections. On both sides, have represented the state well. State tournament runs, et cetera, et cetera. We're gonna dive into this here. We're gonna kick it over to Brandon from Wayzata. Thanks to both coaches for coming on, and let's dive into some section five. All right, DTA Nation, we are welcoming Brandon Carlson, a coach who's been around so long. I figured he was the head coach. I learned he's the assistant. He's been with Wayzata for a long time. Been coaching club and other lacrosse opportunities in the state, in the Midwest, and around the nation. Brandon, welcome to Down the Alley as the official Section 5 source.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here, and I appreciate your time and appreciate all you do for the community of lacrosse in Minnesota, and hope I can provide some interesting insight on Section 5.
Appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on. What does this time of year look for you? I know, we're still in the off season, but starting to peak. We're getting close to March here. It's almost March. Season's right in front of us. What do you like to do this time of year before we, dive into the season?
Well, we got some preseason planning meetings with the other coaches at Wayzata, setting up the first couple of weeks of practice plan and looking at potentially depth charts. What kids are we excited about? What are the young kids that are coming into the program? What do we know about them? Who have we seen play? And then we're doing team Minnesota winter sessions on Sunday mornings right now, so doing some skill development there. And hopefully instilling some leadership in those kids and things that they can bring back to their high school programs. And plan and travel for the summer. Got a busy slate coming up, and making sure that all of those I's are dotted and those T's are crossed, and that all of those travel plans are taken care of, so that I don't have to worry about it during the high school season. I think we're T minus 32 days until the high school season, so
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
getting super excited about that.
Yeah, and you touched on doing some preseason planning meetings. Something I wanted to shout out before we dive into Section 5. The head coach at Wayzata, a guy that you've worked with for a long time, Chad Herr. I believe his wife is going through, is it cancer? Uh, and there is a GoFundMe page. Obviously, it's that's an undertaking for anybody. I know Chad has been at Wayzata for a long time. He's been really influential in the lacrosse community, especially at Wayzata. So we, obviously our thoughts are with him and his wife, but we'll also link the GoFundMe link in the show notes. So if you're listening and you want to help, please, do that. Like I said, Chad has been really involved in lacrosse at least as long as I've been involved. So it's been a long time, and hopefully that they can get through that, and DTA Nation can support them, in some way.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. The Wayzata community is rallying around Chad and his family. Yes, his wife Angela is going through some health issues right now, and support would be greatly appreciated. Chad's been coaching high school lacrosse for going on 30 years right now. Started out in the Dallas area when he was living down there. Was the head coach at Breck for a number of years before coming over to Wayzata. And he's been in and around, club. I know that he's been involved in Chill. He's been involved with Homegrown. He's been involved with the Loons, and he's been a tremendous influence on the lacrosse community in Minnesota. So all of the any and all support that you can offer is greatly appreciated.
As we transition, with talking Section 5, tonight, before we, start looking forward, want to, look back a little bit. Um, any, I ask this every week, but I actually learned in one of the episodes, there's no section realignments, this year. So, learn something new, every time on the mic. Any big, actually today, Maple Grove announced their new head coach. Any big, or, any new coaches in the section. Jake Wilson, I believe, was announced for Maple Grove this morning. Any other new head coaches or other changes of note within Section 5?
Oh, for sure. No, and I appreciate your commentary on the section realignment because it feels like every 2 or 3 years we've got some, section changes going on. No, I saw that Jake Wilson was hired at Maple Grove, and I think that's a tremendous hire. For those that don't know, Gig Wilson was the head coach at Maple Grove for a long, long time, and Jake is his son. That's really a cool legacy story, and I know that Jake was a tremendous player. I know that he's been involved in coaching with Maple Grove since he graduated from college. And I think that's a really nice continuity, a really great story for lacrosse in Minnesota. And I think that that's a really great young hire. And I expect, their trajectory to continue with that. They've got a couple of really nice young players. So I think that that's a really great hire. Also, I believe Evan Hylock was at Blake. He's now at Hopkins, St. Louis Park, the combined team there. And he's a tremendous coach. Exudes positivity, gets more out of the kids than I think most of us could. So I think that that's a really cool opportunity. And then I believe Jake Shear has been hired as the head coach at Blake, who was a Lakeville South player. I believe he was a 2019 graduate, and went on to play college lacrosse and has since come back to Minnesota. And he'll be taking over that Blake program. And I think those are that has been the coaching kind of roundtable this year in Section 5.
And then just to touch on the recent history of Section 5. Section 5 is, obviously a super competitive section. They've represented the state well, at the state tournament, with the Red Knights, seemingly making the state championship game. I don't even know how many years in a row. I've only missed. Yeah, they made it to the state semifinal 2 years ago. So, obviously Section 5 has been, well represented at the state tournament, but outside of Benilde, there are a lot of good teams too, and a lot of competitive teams. What else is going on in this section?
Well, right. I mean, and until somebody in our section beats Benilde in a section game, Benilde's king. And they've earned that. Clearly, they deserve that. It's a tremendous program, an unbelievable amount of talent, and yeah, I agree. From the state level, Benilde is king in this section. I think a lot of the story around Section 5, specifically for last year, is that it was generally a pretty young section. You've got a Rogers team that has a bunch of freshmen and sophomores that were contributing last year. You've got an Armstrong team that had two outstanding midfielders that were both sophomores. You've got a Blake team that had eighth graders, ninth graders, 10th graders, all over their starting varsity roster. These are young teams that are going to continue to develop, and they've got talent in those younger age groups, and it's really exciting to see what happens with some of those teams as those kids mature and step into those leadership roles and really set the tone for the culture of those programs going forward. It is I think it was a relatively young section last year. And with those seniors graduating, and everybody knows who the players were at Benilde, and I had a couple of defensemen that were absolute monsters, and people knew who they were. But it is so exciting as a coach. I think one of the coolest things about coaching prep sports is you don't know how those kids are going to step up into those roles until they're given that opportunity. And with how young the section was last year, I think there could be some really crazy things going forward. I think that there could be some upsets. I think that there's going to be some surprises, and that makes it exciting.
Yeah, no, I think you've teed this up to start diving into these teams, because I agree, it's super exciting. You're starting to see some new names. You already mentioned Rogers. we'll get to them in a little bit. I'm really excited to start diving into this. As we start breaking down the section, we've been kind of just going off of the rankings from the section tournament of last year. And so we'd start with Benilde, number one seed last year, probably not a surprise. Like we've already mentioned, they've been kind of the state representative out of this section for over a handful of years now, consistently making the state tournament and making deep state tournament runs. Benilde, is this a year where they are not taking a massive step back, but maybe a little vulnerable to maybe get a new team to represent Section 5, maybe towards the end of the year?
So like I said at the beginning, until somebody in our section beats Benilde, they are the team to beat. I mean, that's all it is. I think since the section realignment happened and Section 5 is set up the way that it is right now, I don't think that there's anybody in our section that has beaten them. So until that happens, they're king. I trust their process. I don't know honestly who they have coming in their freshman class. But I do know that although they graduated a substantial amount of their offense, their defense is still going to be pretty loaded. They've got some studs back there on defense. I know that they're probably going to start a junior in net. He was a sophomore last year. Didn't see a ton of time, but I have seen him during the offseason at training sessions, and I think the kid can play. And I know that with the kids that they have playing in front of them, it's going to be awfully hard to score against them. We're going to have to be creative. We're going to have to put kids in the right place to do, what they do best. I think their defense is going to be awfully good. I know that they're going to have a young face-off guy this year, but I also know that kid's pretty darn talented. And looking at their scoring from last year, they graduated 4 of their top 5 scorers, but Dylan Papane's coming back, and that kid, he can put up some points. So they're going to figure out a way to put guys in the right situations. They still have, Holton Vanderlinde is coming back. Jack Anderson. I think David Langevin is a super, I mean, he was really young last year, but he's a talented kid. The ceiling's really high for him. They're going to have some young guys contributing on offense. But with the culture that they have there and the expectations that they have, to say they're taking a step back, I don't know that that's the case. There's going to be some growing pains, I think, but I think they're going to be right in the mix at the end of the season.
It is a very interesting program where there's a lot of really high-end talent that has to wait until they're like the predecessor or the senior graduates to get on the field. So they're as hungry as ever to get out there. I do agree though, like looking objectively without trying to get the emotion of Benilde's been so great for so long, to replace a talent like Gus and Sky, that's almost 200 points of offense. They might have somebody that steps in and can do that, but they were 2 special players that could really create their own. They could create their own offense and do it themselves if they absolutely had to. But it also made everybody else around them better. So I will be also very interested to see, who steps up offensively, but it's nice to have, if you have to worry about maybe finding some new guys on offense, to have a loaded defense to kind of protect yourself a little bit early on. That's a good thing to have.
Well, and don't forget, I mean, Hunter Payer was a slick off-ball player. He had great hands. I know that he had some great players that were giving him the ball, but that kid was creative off the ball. He put himself in a great position to be successful. Their offense was something to watch last year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Payer 54 points and Dylan Parker 46 points were their 4th and 5th scorers. I think those guys would be leading the board on a lot of teams.
No question. No question. So although they graduated, a substantial amount, they've got plenty of talent coming up. And a quick plug for another young kid in their program. So Nick Capo also on defense, not a young kid, but a known entity, a guy that can shut down. But they got a kid coming up, Tyler Kirshner, who I watched through the Wayzata youth program. is now at Benilde. He will be a sophomore there this year. That's a name to keep an eye on. I think that he's going to be an impact player.
Love
Noted.
it.
Love it.
Love it. Speaking of Wayzata, the number 2 seed, your squad coming off a 14-2 season. Um, Looking at your guys' scores, you had it looked like a great balance of a good offense with a shutdown defense. Um, I'm going to kick it over to you. You know a lot more than me on this team. What are the Trojans looking like in 2025?
Well, so I think the key for us this year is going to be our leadership. We graduated Alex Score and Will Schneider, an LSM and a close defender that were both two-time captains. Quite frankly, I mean, when Will was a sophomore, he was the character of our team. Our seniors were looking to him. So, I constantly tell my players that you don't need to be that. You need to be the best you that you can be. Um, but that's a pretty big hole, and I'm really curious to see who steps up into it. And I have some really high hopes for some of those guys that are now expected to play those roles. But I want to emphasize to those kids that they don't need to do that. They need to be the best person that they can be, and step up and fill that leadership role the best that they can. That said, I've got a pair of stud junior poles. Ben Weekly is a recent commit to St. John's University in Queens. Odin Schoen is a kid that has progressed tremendously in the last 2 years. Both of those guys saw significant play time when they were freshmen. They were key to what we were doing on defense last year. And now, those are the two guys where, the expectation is you're running the show. And there's a lot that goes into that. I expect, my polls to be, taking the point on communication. There's a lot of organization that goes on the field that they need to take care of that Will and Alec have been doing for the last 3 years. So there's going to be a lot more thinking. There's going to be a lot more decision making for those young men, and how they step up into that role is going to be key as to how we play defense. Offensively, we were returning a lot. We're going to be that's where our seniority is. That's where our experience is. Bennett Brown is a phenomenal talent. He's so fast. He does such a good job to getting to his strengths, and taking advantage of that. He's kind of our spark plug on offense. But Evan Weatherford is going to come back from injury. He sat out all of last year with a shoulder injury. He's back. That'll be a senior. Cullen Britz is a Division I commit that we have at attack. And then we've got Will Maleka is another kid that's been playing, seen a ton of play time since he was a freshman in our program. And it's kind of a coming of age story, where these kids were, either first or second line midfielders when they were freshmen. And now it's their time. And a shout out to Coach Josh Schwartz, our offensive coordinator at Wayzata, because he continues to come up with schemes where he puts these kids in a position to be successful. So, expectations are pretty high at Wayzata right now. Our defense, for the first time in a long time, is a little young and a little inexperienced. So we're going to ride our offense a little bit more.
One thing I feel like doesn't get talked a lot about is conferences. At least I know a lot. There's not much being talked about on MN Lax Hub, but I feel like in general, like conference and conference championships, I feel like it's not publicized enough. And there's probably reasons to that. But Wayzata winning the Lake last year. With the teams and the programs in in that conference, who you're playing week in, week out, that's a huge accomplishment. Who's Wayzata's biggest rival? What are some of those games that you're highlighting and starring and maybe get a little extra up for?
Ah, goodness. Okay, well, I mean, I've got 3 games circled on the calendar every year. Eden Prairie is always a phenomenal game. And that's going to be a especially interesting game this year because, kind of like Benilde, they're returning a ton on defense. I think that is a team that they're going to shut some teams down because their defense is outstanding. I know that their sophomore goalie, or he's currently a sophomore, is a stud. great ball stopper, great outlet passer, great athlete, and has a tremendous work ethic. So I think like Benilde, they're going to be really hard to score on. Our game last year was a double overtime game with them, just tremendous, and it was a defensive battle. So I mean that's a game that I always have circled on the calendar. Edina, Andy Lee is a good friend of mine, and we always have a nice friendly banter going into the week leading up to the Edina game, and it's always giving me a hard time about what junk defense I'm going to throw at him. And this year, I've never seen anybody quadruple pole in midfield, but holy cow, that midfield line that they have, that number one midfield line, that might be the best midfield line the state has ever seen. So that one's circled, and then Minnetonka got us last year, ran a crazy 10-man ride on us. Really threw us off what we wanted to do early in the game, and we came back later in the game. They whooped us pretty good for the first 2.5 quarters, and then I think we figured them out, but didn't get close enough, and that's always a fun game. And then additionally, STMA always seems to be a really hard fought game in conference with us, and I always look forward to that.
Ted, did you have anything to add on Wayzata?
Um, I really like the offense. A lot of contributors coming back. I mean, that just kind of that might be one of those things where as a coach you kind of have to stay out of the way a little bit, where you got so many good players coming back. Like you get excited as an O coordinator getting all your guys back, but like so many good players just that can play. And that'll be interesting. Because I know high praise for Edina's first line midfield. I think they are tremendous. But Wayzata's, that starting group that you have too is really good as well. And then I know you mentioned him. He's now playing college lacrosse, but Will Schneider from last year, one of the best defensemen I've ever seen play in Minnesota. And I just shout him out. I don't know if he listens to this. I don't know if I'm sure the Wayzata crew knows him, but I think playing at Richmond now, right? Is that correct?
Yeah. So those guys our goalie from last year, Henry Kurt, is at Rockhurst. Alex Score is actually starting at U Indy right now, and I think U Indy's ranked number 9 in the country, D2,
they're up
something
there.
like that.
Yep.
So he's having a tremendous experience there right now. And then Will Schneider, not just tremendous defenseman, tremendous lacrosse player, but he's one of the best young men that I've ever worked with in my life. And, the leadership that he provided, the direction that he provided for our team, how he set up the kids that we have stepping into those leadership roles right now, and I'm eternally grateful for the influence that he's had on our program.
Moving on, the number 3 seed going into the Section 5 playoffs, Rogers, maybe one of the most surprising teams, at least for me, in 2024. They didn't lose a game until the second half of May. They were on an absolute heater, beating the likes of Maple Grove. Point at the schedule, they beat Maple Grove. So they're playing people. Blaine was on a heater. They beat them too last year. Rogers, hockey market too. They're getting really good at hockey. Yep. What is going on in the city of Rogers right now?
So it's a growing community. They're going through kind of the same boom that St. Michael Albertville had, 4 or 5 years ago, where the population exploded a little bit. Some of those kids that have been, in the youth programs or maturing into the high school that had moved into that community as it was growing. Rogers is definitely a growing community. They got athletes all over the field. I don't want to underplay Brady. I think it's pronounced Mean, or is it Meany? Was a senior for them last year, number 55. When we played them 2 years ago, I thought he was the best player on the field. Certainly the best athlete. The kid is explosive, unbelievably creative. If you want to look up his highlight film, I know playing against Maple Grove, he had an absolutely unbelievable goal where he got around the outside of one defender, got back inside on his right-handed player. I didn't see him put the stick in the left hand very much, but so creative at getting back to his right hand and just so ridiculously athletic that he was able to do it. Worked hard on ground balls, ran off the wing on faceoffs for him, played both ends of the field. I mean, the kid completely ran himself out of his gas tank. That kid was an absolute stud, and I think he was ridiculously underrated in the state of Minnesota. What an explosive player. But if you look at their scoring from last year, they had a freshman and a sophomore that were their number 2 and number 3 scorers. Um, Youth all over the field. I know Brett Cassidy is a kid that plays LSM in the summer. I believe he was a midfielder and their number 2 scorer. Um, that's an athlete right there. That kid's going to be able to do something. And then Luke Burmis, an attackman. He's a big body. He's hard to get off the ball. Protects his stick really well. Really accurate shooter, and he doesn't need a whole lot of space to get that shot off. So I think that they're returning a lot of really interesting players. I don't think what happened last year was a fluke. I think that they're a program on the rise. And it'll be really interesting to see, what depth they can develop in those younger classes.
Yeah, it looks like their goalie was a junior as well, so they'll get their
Yep.
goalie back, 56 percent save percentage, so strong year. Played most of the minutes, had a couple guys that got in a quarter here and there, but they're gonna have stability on in goal too. And then I think is their face-off guy he was a junior as well. So this
Yep.
Adam Lejavsky, 60% face-off, and took I don't know 130 face-offs last year. So key positions, it seems like they get a lot of guys back.
The 4 seed last year, Maple Grove. Most teams that are 11-4 in the top four, it'd be great. And not to this isn't meant to be like a chirp towards Maple Grove, but you almost feel like that's almost like kind of a down year for them. But this is a program again, year in year out. They're competing in Section 5, a top four for sure, year in and year out in this section. Has ran into the buzzsaw of Benilde. You look at their losses last year, Lakeville North state championship game, Edina, obviously a really good squad. Benilde there at the end. Rogers, who we just talked about. Maple Grove. It seems like they're right there. I know they bring their stud back in 2025. Are they going to be climbing the ranks in this section, or is it going to be, are they going to be kind of right there in the mix? What do we got on the Crimson in 2025?
I think that they're a slightly more mature team than they were last year. Ricky Peterson is probably the best player in the section. I mean that he's a complete player. Got both hands. He makes the other kids on the field better. He can throw guys open. It's how their team is going to play off of him. But that kid's explosive. That kid's going to make them a contender for sure. And then they got a guy out of the midfield, Grant Jensen, another just a stud player, big body, really athletic, kind of a downhill strong dodger. So to have that kind of that tandem, attack and midfield, playing off of each other, I think that they're going to have some success there. And then I'm really interested to see what Jake Wilson does with them. It's kind of his first, opportunity as the head coach there. I know that he's been the offensive coordinator there for the last couple of years. So you've got some continuity with that. Those kids are familiar with him. And I don't see them taking a step back. I actually think that they're going to be better this year than they were last.
Yeah, and what a great like situation for a new head coach too. I know he's been there as an assistant, but when we heard about this Maple Grove job opening, PMAC and I both said like, man, this is a really good spot
Mhm.
for anyone new that's coming in because they were the 6A football champions this year. They have a great hockey program. They probably have a good basketball program. I don't follow prep basketball too much, but a big school that has a lot of a lot of resources to do well in sports in general. There's athletes,
Mhm.
a youth program, a lot of good boxes that are checked here at the Maple Grove program. And
Yep. Um, yeah, no, I think that they've got athletes on the field, and I think Jake Wilson is a good up and coming coach. I think that he's going to put them on the same page, and I think that program will be better this year than they were last, for sure. Um, there was a freshman midfielder that they had that I really liked last year, and I feel very fortunate that I get to coach him at Wayzata this year. Thor Sukup was their fifth leading scorer last year as a freshman, and he has transferred into Wayzata.
Okay.
So add a little bit of depth to our offensive side of the field, and he's another big body downhill dodging kind of midfielder, and yeah.
The fifth seed, kind of middle of the pack team. Robbinsdale Armstrong ran into Maple Grove there at the end, but had a pretty good season. Their losses were close. Against some of the teams we've discussed and other competitive teams around the state. Robbinsdale Armstrong, they're a team that I'm a little less familiar with. So interested to hear your take. A team that's about 500. That seems to be from the outside looking in. Right there.
Yeah. And I talked a little bit about Brady from Rogers as being a really underrated player. I think last year, Aiden Robb, an LSM for Armstrong, was an unbelievably underrated player. He was, for lack of a better term, a little mean, but through heavy checks, a physical player, ran up and down the field. Goodness, he had 10 goals for him last year as a pole. I mean, that kid's running all over the field. I know at certain points he had man up reps for him. Just ridiculously under appreciated player across the state. That said, they got two kids coming back that are phenomenal players. Both of them are lefties. They're both midfielders. You got Brady Northrup and Jack Olson. Incredibly creative players, throwing behind the back passes, playing off of one another. It is truly fun to watch them create. And I'm a defensive coach, and we played against them, and the frustration that comes along with that. But the things that they're doing with their sticks, the rolling off of pressure, toe dragging through, splitting double teams, those two kids are fun to watch. So if you're not watching those guys play at Armstrong, you're missing out on some fun lacrosse.
Yeah, I saw Brady play this fall at a club event. He was just on another team, and I was like, who is this guy? He's so slippery, and he's just like he's not a big kid, but he's deceptively strong and quick, and like gets his hands free. Really fun, as an offensive coach, really fun player to watch. I would 100% agree with that.
Yep. And neither one of them's a real big body. They're both a little shorter of stature. Jack is a little bit thicker than Brady, but very similar style of play where they're just creative. They're slippery. That's the perfect term for describing how they play. They're slippery. They can roll off of pressure. They don't shy away from defensive pressure. So you lean on them a little bit and they roll off of it, and it really creates a challenge for how you play defense against them.
Last year, the number 6 seed Hopkins Park coming in with a new head coach. And, last year they had one of the best athletes across the state in Malachi Berry at Detroit Mercy this year. I got to see him play against Marquette. I can't imagine what he was doing on a high school field last year. Hopkins Park, new head coach. What do you have on them?
Well, you're right about Malachi Berry. The guy was a shutdown defender, clearing the ball, under pressure, had great stick skills. One of the best players in the section, and really a great kid. So thank you for the plug out for him. Coming back this year, they graduate their goalie, and I like that kid an awful lot. He was a hype kid. Saw a lot of rubber because they weren't getting a ton of possessions off the face-off. But man, they beat EP last year. That what a tremendous building block. Those kids believed, they played together. And I think that with Evan Hylock there and the positivity that he's going to bring, I suspect, and this is purely conjecture, but having the youth program there and having the ability to develop some of those players as they're coming in versus being at a private school like Blake. You have the ability to know those kids at the youth level and develop them. That's a program that I'm going to watch out for in the next 4 to 5 years, because I think that they're going to develop that. I think that they're going to have higher numbers participating. And I think that that is definitely a key to success. Um, Evan
I forgot
Hagen,
about that EP win. Was that
yeah,
the biggest upset
Just gonna
of
say that.
2024? Is that the biggest upset in the post-COVID era? Is it how, like that was a massive win for this program last year.
Yeah.
yep. Well, and you talked about Malachi Berry. He played against Danny Burke at Eden Prairie. And Danny Burke was a tremendous player, still a tremendous player playing at the college level. And the work that Malachi Berry did against him was just absolutely astounding. I had an opportunity to watch that film. That was a team that was hyped. You should see the celebration from that. That was just outstanding. That's high school sports in a nutshell right there. So yeah, I mean, I think that this is a program on the rise. They were also, not a. There were a lot of contributors in their junior and senior class. So they graduated a lot of guys that had been playing for a while. But I'm really curious to see how those young guys step up into those roles.
The number 7 seed last year, Blake. They're coming in with the new coach as well. Probably a whole new staff by the sounds of it. Like you mentioned earlier, younger team. Kind of in a rebuild, retool mode. Blake going to be on the rise in 2025.
Not just 2025, 2026, 2027, and 2028. They started a lot of freshmen. They had a couple of eighth graders that sprinkled in. Their goalie was only a sophomore last year, I believe. Jack Ulland. Yep, sophomore last year. And I will say, having played them in the section tournament last year, that kid is amazing. We shelled him. We got a lot of shots on him. Um, don't quote me on this, but I think he had 30 saves in that game, and that is just unbelievable. So to have a kid like that between the pipes, setting the tone for what's going on up the field, I think that's tremendous, and I think that that's a program that will take big strides in the next 2 to 3 years.
The 8th seed Breck School, led by Corbin Tao at the head coach, one of the bigger names in lacrosse across the state. Another team that we don't run into very often. We had a Breck player who played in our box league a few years ago, who was a stud.
Cormac O'Neill.
Yep.
How old was he?
He was a
What grad year?
22. He was a 22, I think.
He was a 22. I think that's the only Breck player that I personally know, but he was a stud. What do you know on Breck? As a guy who knows nothing about Breck, nor could they wouldn't even let me in that school. They don't want me anywhere near their academic programs.
That might be a good choice, I guess. Well, I think that they were also a pretty young team last year. I wasn't able to get any grad years on a lot of their players, and I know that their roster wasn't super deep. They did have some decent athletes that were running out of the midfield, but I think a couple of those guys are gone. But Corbin Tao is an amazing coach, one of the best in the state of Minnesota. Fundamentally, I don't know that there's a better one. Watch that guy shoot in warmups.
Yeah.
And you're going to realize that there's a far cry from the underhand to high shot that the kids in Minnesota like so much, and the diversity of release angles that he has. I have full faith that he's going to put that program on the right trajectory.
Is the meme on Instagram going around of the assistant coach lighting up the goalie in warmups? Is that Corbin Tao?
No, not at all. No. He warms them up appropriately.
No, I know.
But
I'm just
but
kidding.
I've told him that. I like watching him shoot.
Yeah.
It is poetry.
I remember the first time, this was years ago. I was like running a clinic and he was one of the other coaches there and he was just messing around at the goalies and like it's that like you said, like in Minnesota, like the big crow hop and the wind up, and he just snaps his wrist and just stings corners. And then like the goalie will step high, stick side, and it will go low offside. He just
Yep.
messes with them. It really actually is entertaining to watch him shoot on a goalie. It sounds like stupid to say, but I'm like, I was in awe. watching it. It was like funny, and like I kind of felt bad for the goalie, but I was like also like kind of fanboying in a little bit too.
And to round out the section, Osseo Park Center. Um, Unfortunately, another team that I personally haven't ran into all that often. So interested to hear your perspective. I was trying to read up on them. It sounds like they've got a coach who isn't brand new this year, but is in his second or third year now. So maybe starting to be able to build something there. What's going on in this program?
Yeah, I believe he is a second year head coach, stepping in after Darren Nelson retired. And, shout out to Darren Nelson, one of the godfathers of lacrosse in Minnesota, and an all around good guy. And has, quite frankly, weathered some very lean years in that Osseo Park Center program, and has put on the field a really good product. I know that the kids that were a part of that program respect him tremendously, and he did an amazing job.
Yeah.
I think they graduated 3. So you want to talk about the youth of the section? They only graduated 3 guys. So no matter what, no matter what your record was last year, if you're returning 21 guys from a section roster, there are some things that you have to build up. And I think that program kind of encapsulates the youth of the section from the last year, where that they're on an upward trajectory, and I'm really curious to see what happens with that. I think Blake is a team certainly on the rise. I think Hopkins is a team where the infrastructure is in place right now, and you're going to see an improvement. I think Rogers has all of the tools to crack into that beginning, and I would expect this Osseo Park Center team to at least make some noise in the section this year, and continue that on after that.
Love it. Love it. As we've discussed, Section 5 has, obviously made a lot of noise, over the years at the state tournament. Kind of talking to you, it sounds like there could be a few, different teams that could come out of this section. How do you see Section 5 representing the section at state, no matter who, might come out of this section in 2025?
Oh man, you want to talk about like how it stacks up as statewide as a whole? Um, it, it's hard not to be a fan of Stillwater right now. Their offense is going to be pretty explosive. It's hard not to be a fan of Edina right now. I think that offense is going to be pretty explosive, but they're returning essentially their entire defense, and I think they had a sophomore goalie last year who developed tremendously throughout the year. So I think that those are 2 programs to keep an eye on. I think that Eastridge is going in the right direction. Again, they graduated some studs last year, but they've got some kids that are now seniors and juniors, and even in their sophomore class, their goalie's only a sophomore, that truly can play. So you get some scary teams around the state. Prior Lake is never going to be out of it. Lakeville North is never going to be out of it. Man, I still think whoever comes out of Section 5 is looking at a top 4 seed, just because of Benilde is a known entity. I think Wayzata is a known entity. I think Maple Grove's a known entity. I think Rogers is a team that is going to continue what they did last year. I don't know that they're a 13-win team again this year, but I think that they're a team that is well tested. They've got plenty of experience, and you've got 2 absolute studs in the midfield at Armstrong. I think that this section stacks up with any section in the state. I mean, I really do think whoever comes out of here is looking at one of those top 4 seeds. And you get to the state tournament, anybody on any given day can beat each other, right? I know Wayzata coming out of the Lake Conference is going to be well tested. I have no idea how those games are going to go. Edina is a tough game. Eden Prairie is a tough game. Minnetonka is a tough game. I think Minnetonka is a team to watch out for this year. I don't know that they're getting the credit that they deserve. They were not a senior heavy team last year. and they improved dramatically throughout the season. So I think that's a team to watch out for. But I know Rogers is upping their out of conference schedule a little bit. They're going to play some better teams, and they're going to be more prepared. I think that our game against them in the section last year was kind of lopsided. But I don't think it was an accurate representation of who they were as a team. I think that they were riding high and confident as they should be, but didn't not fully prepared isn't the right word. We did some things in the first quarter that knocked them off of their game plan, and I think that they weren't entirely prepared for that. I think that they're talented enough that they can give anybody a game. So I think that this is a section that stacks up pretty well against anybody in the state.
I would agree, and I think not to say that that's obvious, but I think it is. I fully anticipate, top four seed. You're getting a seed, not a random draw. And I think whoever does make it out, I would agree with you, can compete. Could make a state tournament run. All that jazz. We're not asking guests this year for your like top four seedings or any guesses like that, but would love to hear a bold take about Section 5. You can kind of take that any direction you want. What's your bold take for Section 5 in 2025?
Great question. Benilde won't be the one seed in the section tournament.
All right.
There's my bold take.
All right. I like that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And that's bold.
And that is bold because since we aligned into this section, they've been the one seed every year. And that is a testament to their culture. That's a testament to their coaches. They've transitioned coaches in that time period.
Yep.
And not missed a step. They have talent all over the field. But yeah, that's my bold take for this year.
I love it. I love it. It's bold. It's great. Brandon, I appreciate you coming on down the alley. Appreciate your Section 5 insight. All the breakdowns, all of the knowledge on from the programs to the players to the history of Section 5. Appreciate you coming down the alley, your time, and good luck to you and your squad this spring.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time as well. Appreciate all you're doing for lacrosse in Minnesota. This is a tremendous opportunity, and I really appreciate it. Very quickly, can I give just two quick
shout out
points here? So we talked about it at the beginning, but Coach Chad Herr and his family are going through something that I don't think any family should have to go through. And with that, that GoFundMe has been set up. Anything you're willing to offer is greatly appreciated. And then secondly, for the second year in a row, I have the tremendous opportunity to coach the New Balance All-America Midwest team for the 2027 age group. So if you are interested in that, I can provide my email, and you can ask me questions about it. The tryouts are going to be in Chicago at the end of June. The event takes place at the end of July. And it's a awesome opportunity to showcase what tremendous lacrosse we have in the Midwest. So be thinking about that.
For sure. We will we'll also provide your email. If someone reaches out to us and they want it or whatever, we can we can get them connected with you as well. So yeah, thank you so much. It was great to kind of hear more about all these teams, and I definitely agree. Section 5 is one of the better sections. There's a lot of really good teams, and we're getting excited for the season coming up here.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yep. Have a good night.
Yeah,
Thanks.
you too.
DTA Nation, we're welcoming Jeff Johnson, the head girls lacrosse coach of Champlin Park High School. Jeff, thank you for coming down the alley as the official Section 5 girls lacrosse source.
Good to be part of the program. I'm excited to sit and talk to you about lacrosse. I can talk for hours, and anyone who knows me, they know that I can get carried away when it comes to talking lacrosse. So if you need to shut me up, feel free at any point.
Well, then you're the perfect guest and exactly what we're looking for tonight. Yeah, before we kind of look forward to the 2025 season, kind of looking back, first, any I know there's no section realignments this year, but any new head coaches in the section, or any other changes or news in this section that we should note, before we start talking about it?
Yeah, so I mean, I think as we talk about the section, certainly as we had realignment a couple of years ago, I was, in section 7 for years and years. Our program was always in section 7. In 2023. We went to state, and then last year was our first year in section 5. So somewhat new to the section, but not new to the teams that are in the section. So I mean, we've had some good battles with many of these teams over the years. We have Maple Grove sitting in our Northwest Suburban Conference, so we have seen them a lot. And as you talk about Benilde, we saw them last year in Section 5 in the section championship. So yeah, so we have some experience. We played Wayzata probably for maybe like 6-7 years in a row. Have a good relationship with the Wayzata coach, so we've always put that game on the schedule to kind of see where we're at and how we're stacked up against each other, and have had some great matchups over the years.
I believe isn't Coach Kara at Benilde a Champlin Park alum?
She
Like,
is,
yeah,
yep, she's a
that's
Champlin
what I
Park
thought.
alum.
I thought.
I think she even coached 1 year as an assistant coach at Champlin Park just before I started in 2019. Then she went over to Benilde and's been an assistant over there now. So yeah, so there's a few I have a few alumni coaching out there around and now some other coaches from within my coaching tree. Coach Rachel, she's over at Simley. She was my
Fun fact about
assistant.
Rachel, to interject,
Yeah.
I was her camp counselor.
Oh, fun.
She grew up in the same kind of church community as we did, and I was her camp counselor. And now, yeah, super excited to see her at Simley. I think she's the head coach.
She is the head coach over
Yeah,
there. Yeah. So
super
she took
sweet.
over. She took over. She was in Champlin. She was a teacher and then moved over to Simley. And we reached out and talked. We got them on the schedule this year, so it'll be fun to see her. I know a lot of the girls that we still have on the team. She had a part in their development as well. So they're always excited to see her. We scrimmaged them last year, so it's always fun to get together with them. So yeah, Rachel's great. So and a little shout out to her. I know, there's a couple years ago you guys were pretty hot on our social media. So a little shout out to Rachel. She was our guru when it comes to a lot of the stuff that you guys were liking. So if you see good stuff coming off the Simley site, that's a shout out to her. So
Love
you
that.
watch for them close.
Did you find a replacement for that role, a student intern? What's social media looking like for the squad in 2025?
Yeah, we'll still be all right. I mean, we've got a few different people. That I have another coach that's doing a lot of work for us right now in that area, and a couple other folks. For the first year ever, I kind of gave it over to letting our captains do some stuff on there. So that's always a little bit nerve-wracking what they're going to post out there, but they've been pretty good. They're on a short leash and they know that. So
It's not just the social media. You guys do like your photos they get for media day are
yeah,
like you do like the smoke and everything like that, right? Like who
we
does all that for you guys?
We do. We have Prenslow Photography. He's up here in the North Metro. Does a lot of stuff for our school, and I think we were one of the first programs that asked him to take it to another level. So
Yeah,
and now it's pretty standard for our whole school. I think
cool.
every program is getting, or having that opportunity to ramp up their pictures and get big posters out on the fence outside of our stadium for our
Yep.
seniors and the team and whatnot. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
great.
it's
But
fun.
last year we got a new scoreboard in our stadium with a video board. So now on game day we got our hype videos going, and the starting lineup and stuff like that too. So we're trying to make it a fun experience for the girls and for the fans, and just to kind of keep pushing the envelope when it comes to trying to create that experience for them. So
No, that's huge. I think, yeah, like you said, it enhances the experience for the players. It creates more engagement for them and the fans, and I'm sure the community as a whole. So, no, that's cool. Uh, before we look forward, would love to look, recent history of the section. On the boys' side, it was super easy. Where they're like, hey, Benild's been repping, the section for the last, however many years. On the girls' side, correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like, recent history, yes, it's been Benilde for the girls, last couple years maybe, but Wayzata has come out of this section. Blake girls, obviously,
right.
they go on runs. You're in the mix. Maple Grove has got a good program. I feel like there's more state representation out of this section, and obviously teams have been coming in and out of this section too. Am I on the right track with that, or what's been the history of Section 5?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. You really did. I mean, I think there was a number of years back, Blake was just a dominating team. They had some great legendary coaches that were winning that and were the top team pretty much in the state for years. So, I mean, I think Blake held that crown for quite a while. Um, Certainly, then over the last number of years, Benilde has kind of taken the reins. I think some of the other privates, the Blakes and Brecks, have settled back just a little bit from where they once were, and I think Benilde and has really kind of grabbed hold of that over the last few years. They've had some pretty solid players.
Looking ahead to 2025 now, we're going to kind of be going, team by team. How we've done it so far is just kind of going by last year's section rankings. So, starting with the Red Knights, they were the number one seed. As discussed, they've been repping, the section for the last few years, if not more. Benilde, are they? What did they lose? What are they bringing back? Are they the favorite again going into 2025?
Well, I think they've been the champion for a while until somebody knocks them off. They're still there. They're always reloading. They always seem to find more girls that come in and play at a high level. Certainly, they've got some good coaching over there that has allotted that. But Benilde, it's a different looking team. I mean, as we look at their 2025 team from where they were in 2024, they lost 12 seniors from that class, which is big, including their goalie, and not just any 12 seniors. I mean, I think they lost as much as anyone. They lost 295 points out of their offense, so and over 200 draw control. So that alone is that team is going to look different. I don't know what it's going to look like. I mean, it's TBD as far as how much they can reload. I know they still have a couple of D1 players sitting there that played with that group last year as well. So I know they lose a lot. I know they still have players. I know they'll be bringing in. I think they had a eighth grade goalie last year who I don't know how much time she saw, but I think she'll be a freshman goalie, probably making her first starts, I'm guessing, unless they have somebody else that I'm unaware of.
Ted, Katie, what do you have on the Red Knights? Obviously, graduating a player like Julia Evans, hard to replace that, but I would agree. Benilde has figured out a way to, continue to reload. What do we have on the Red Knights?
As noted, we got the Vang sisters. Two players that were big contributors. That Charlize is a senior. June is it June?
Yes.
Is a junior. So they do have some experience coming back on the offensive end. And then kind of a note here again from another girls lacrosse source. They actually won the annual Cabin Fever tournament it must have been last weekend, at the time of this recording. And, this particular source said BSM lost a lot, as you just noted, Jeff. But they find a way now to go and win a preseason tournament. Again, we take it with a grain of salt, but they, like you said, their culture, their coaching, they have it figured out how to get new players in the mix that are good. And shout out to number one for BSM at Cabin Fever. Had a heck of a run in bracket play. Next time we'll know your name, we promise. So apologies for the player. We don't know her name, but she stood out as a newer addition to the BSM squad in 2025. So I think all those points were great and right on the money as far as they lose a lot, but a team that's been a champion, they will find a way to bring new players in.
I think you made a good point too about the goalie. They lost a senior goalie, obviously, seasoned, a couple state tournaments under her belt, but we've kind of been on a trend noting these really young players who have maybe played seventh, eighth, now ninth grade varsity. The age isn't really giving them any sort of it's not holding them back by any means. They're getting just as much exposure to the varsity time. And it's almost like who knows what they're really capable of. And I think this is going to be their biggest question mark, and quite honestly could be their biggest surprise of like, oh, you lose your goalie, but quite honestly, how much time did she get? Were they even going to give her time because it was a senior that she was behind? And she could come out of the gate just as strong, if not stronger. And we don't know. So I think that's kind of an exciting aspect on their part. And I think something we've seen a lot of that, especially the last two sections of like really young classes are finally they're dominant and they're finally in high school. What's the ninth grade class? 2028s?
Yeah.
Right. So it's like they've been around, they've got all this playing experience already, but they're finally in high school. And I think it kind of gives them maybe a little bit of an edge to be like, I'm playing, now we're peers. Now I'm not really just the young kid on the block. We're here and we're the same and we're equals. And they were already dominating. So it's like, what else are they going to do now that they're actually in the same building during the day?
I agree. I think that's huge to be able to have those seventh and eighth graders to be able to play up. I mean, we just had a recent change starting last season where our school district, we were the only school district in the state of Minnesota that did not allow seventh and eighth graders to play at the high school level. So we're taking advantage of that as a program, and starting our growth process much earlier now. So, to be able to have those seventh and eighth graders, giving them the opportunity to come and play at the high school, get high school coaching, starting at the seventh grade and 5 days a week, with sticks in their hands is certainly going to make a difference. So we're going to have some of those kids that are going to have the opportunity to be key contributors as they hit ninth grade, just because they've now seen the game a little bit faster pace, understanding what that looks like to play at the high school level.
Interesting. Yeah. Every time we're on the mic, we learn something new. I didn't know there was discrepancies, within that. But number 2 seed last year, Maple Grove, looking at just scores, a tight loss against Champlin, a tie against Benilde, and their only other one goal loss against EP, and their only other loss was Prior Lake. So a team that was very competitive right there. The 2 seed last year, Maple Grove, another team, they seem to be in the mix year in and year out. How do they look in 2025?
Yeah, they're going to be, I think they're going to be really good. I think when you look through what teams in the different teams in the section and who's lost what, Maple Grove they lost 7 girls, including their D2 goalie. I know they'll be bringing in a freshman goalie in Maple Grove. I know she's not brand new to the game. She's been playing for a little bit, and I've seen her play a little bit already as well. So I think she's going to be fine. And they lost a couple of key players. A couple of the girls that they lost Van Curler, 48 points. Grace Erickson, a good defender, and had 68 draw control. So those are the key players, their goalie, and those two other players were keys to their team last year. With that said, they're also returning Dunn and Van Wyck and Iverson, Kudla, and Isaacson. So, I mean, they've got some players coming back, some kids that have showed that they can play at this level and play at a high level. So I think they're definitely a team to watch, and I think they're right there in the mix.
Yeah, Riley Dunn committed to Austin, PA, Division One. We got March Madness coming up here. I feel like Austin, PA is always a team that's in the March Madness, like a mid-major team that's always in the March Madness tournament. I didn't even know they had a lacrosse program, so that's pretty cool. I think is that South Carolina? Is that what they are? Um, but anyway, 82 points, 67 draw controls. That's a lot of production coming back as a junior, and then so is Van Wyck also at 82 points. So that's a nice little tandem there of strength to bring back. And, we kind of said this on the boys podcast too about Maple Grove is it's a big school, a lot of athletes, a lot of good sports across the board. So you kind of, you got to assume that they have access to great athletes year in and year out. And so, you can't really ever count Maple Grove out of anything, to be honest.
The 3 seed Champlin Park, 14-2, incredible season. Only loss in the regular season was the Maple Grove. You avenged that in the section semis before having a battle against the Red Knights. Champlin, what's your squad? You'll know a lot better than me. What do we got in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, we lost a big 2024 class. I mean, if you look at things, you'll see that we lost 14 girls from our 2024 class as a full program. It's kind of exciting. Other than the fact, I think we had 17 seniors go out the door through graduation as a whole, and we had one of our biggest programs last year in the low 60s. This year we are actually going to be above that. We're going to be probably 65 plus across our 3 teams, which is an exciting thing because we've got good numbers. We've got, a lot of kids that want to come out and play, and if they're dedicated and really get after it and continue to develop their skills, I think it's an exciting place for the program as a whole. Speaking more directly to the varsity, we are returning some good players. We have the twins, Paige and Reese Hagenbart, both committed D1, one to Temple, one to Akron. So exciting.
They weren't a package deal.
They weren't a package deal.
They're going their separate ways.
Going their separate ways. A little interesting. I think a lot of people and a number of coaches that I talked to, college coaches that I talked to about them, they were kind of hoping for a package deal, I think. And I know there were some schools that were recruiting them, trying to get them both. But yeah, I mean,
so did they each pick the school who only recruited them? Like, yeah, I'm going this one. This coach likes me, not my sister. I'm going there.
Yeah, I mean, I think they wanted to go their own ways. I think as they looked through their options and kind of looked to see what the needs are. And one of them, so Paige is a goalie. She's a phenomenal goalie. I don't know if you guys have seen her in action at all, but I think she both Reese and Paige were All-State last year and played in the All-State game. And I think Paige, she stood on her head a little bit that day in that All-State game, made a ton of saves against some of the best players in the state. So I think she represents the goalie position really, really well in the state. And I'd make an argument she's the best goalie in the state. But
I mean, the numbers here, what I have, a 3.87 goals against average and 58% save percentage, against a tough schedule. So that's those are elite numbers. So I haven't seen her play personally, but the stats are trending to that direction.
I feel like I heard about the state game. Like I heard that there was a comment that she kind of had like a standout game. Do they look alike? I feel like I've only ever seen Reese, not the goalie.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I've only ever seen her, and I'm like, I guess I've never even really seen them together. It's
Yeah, I
kind of
mean they
besides the point, but
I mean if you see them together, they look alike a little bit, except Reese stands out in a crowd because Reese is an attacker,
yeah.
going to Akron, and she's a draw control specialist for
Yep.
me as
Yep.
well. And Reese is 6'1" and
Yes.
a big strong kid, and a formidable force when she gets the
Yes.
ball. So I mean she's a tough player to stop. So they from that perspective they look different. I mean Paige is
Okay.
not 6 feet, but she's 5'9", 5'10". So
Because
I
I
mean
don't think I ever really realized they were twins. I mean, I knew they were sisters, but I guess I never really even put that together. So that's exciting. They both have bright careers ahead of them on their own, blazing their own trail. I love it.
yeah, they're really good kids. I'm excited for them. It was nice that they were both able to land a couple of D1 spots. And it doesn't go without hard work. I mean, anytime you can land one of those D1 schools, you've obviously put in a lot of time and
Yes,
impressed the right people. So yeah, shout out to them. They're fantastic. It's nice to have one on each side of the ball as far as what's
for
coming
sure.
back. So yeah. So I mean that's kind of the starting point with my team. I also have Elena Rail, who's signed D2 CSP. So she's a midfielder for me, great defender, on the defensive side of the ball as a midfielder as well. She put up good numbers. Also Miley Jurassic.
Oh yeah,
She's smaller in stature and fast. Gets all over the field. She's gonna sign D2 here real soon. So couple of D1s, couple of D2s. We I think that's still something that we can build off of. We're losing 180 points, about half of our points from last year. So, um, with the loss of our two starting mids with Annabelle and Lauren out the door, that certainly will impact a few things. We've got some young midfielders with some really good speed and a freshman and a sophomore that will likely take the reins on those spots. So exciting to see what they can do. But and then I have to do some work on my defense. I lost some defenders as well, but to have a experienced third year starting goalie back there, hopefully she can communicate well to the defense and kind of keep them going. So we've had good success over the years defensively. I think, like you said, not only goalie save percentage, but I think we were around four goals a game we were giving up last year. So I think that always puts you in the mix of every game if you can keep teams under 5.
All right, the number 4 seed, Wayzata, the Trojans. Looking at their record, you'd think 6-8, but you look at their schedule. They look like a battle-tested team. Ended up falling short to Blake in the section tournament, but Wayzata, they went through the ringer of a schedule last year. It looked like.
Yeah, they had a tough schedule. They certainly played a number of tough teams along the way, and I know we played them. Like I said before, we played them in the regular season, and ended up beating them that day. But they've lost 5 girls. They lost their goalie. I know they were kind of splitting time with their goalie. Their goalie went to UCCS from last year, but I think it was almost a 50-50 split for their goalies from last year when we played them. I know, and when I scouted them, I think every time I was seeing them playing halves. So I think they'll have some experience there. I don't know that there'll be a huge drop off in between the pipes, but um, they did lose a couple of players. I think it was 5 total off of that team. But they are returning a lot of their draw team, which is important. If you can win the draw, that's a good place to start as far as having possession and giving yourself opportunities to score. So I think, yeah, I think they're still they're right there. I mean, they depending on what they're bringing in and what young players can fill some of those spots of players that went out the door. I think they're gonna be a contender as well.
Yeah, couple notes here on Wayzata. Senior Ainsley Owens, headed to Eastern Michigan University. Uh, kind of did a little bit of everything. 44 goals, 6 assists. So obviously did it on the offensive end, but 40 ground balls, 47 draw controls, 25 forced turnovers. So very like a two-way player. And then this Ava Schneider, you talked about their draw team, 112 draw controls last year. Also a senior. Wonder if she's related to Will Schneider, who we just shouted out on the boys side, who just graduated. But yeah, 112 draw controls, and like you said, I mean, if you can have the ball and you can get it to your offense and not let the other team ever have it, then you have a good chance of winning games. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so I think Wayzata will be interesting. You know, another big school that has a lot of athletes that I'm sure they'll be able to fill those roles for what they lost.
The number 5 seed last year, Blake, as discussed, a program of excellence, a program with a vast history. Last year coming off a 500 season, but a lot like Wayzata, you look at their losses. They're against some of the top teams, around the state. They ended up as a seed, upsetting Wayzata, and then falling to Benilde in the section semis. Blake, what's going on in with their program in
Yeah,
2025?
yeah. So Blake lost 7 girls and their goalies. So and one being Cynthia Lyman, who had 80 points. So she was the main catalyst. We played Blake last year during the regular season. Um, so I mean, I think they're losing some. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know that they had a really huge program. So I feel like their numbers were down, and whether they were able to replace that in the off season, I'm not positive. It's hard to know sometimes with the privates as to how they can regenerate more players or not. But I know they had some losses. So and their top players. So I know they returned Palmby, and I think I forget, I can't pronounce her name, but they, I think, had 28 points each. I think it's Krejci. But so they have a couple players coming back that were on the roster last year. Um, and whether they have some young players coming in or not, I'm not positive.
The number 6 seed last year, Armstrong Cooper. Um, they've been a team in the mix. What are they looking like in 2025?
Yeah, they lost 4 players. Probably the key player that they lost, Brielle Anderson. She had 39 points. They do return Katie Poloni, who had 64 points, and Ashley Storley, 31 points. And they also have a senior goalie. So they're bringing a couple players back. I know in losing Brielle Anderson was some speed that they're going to miss at the mid, um, but yeah, I think that's kind of the what I know about them at this point.
The number 7 seed last year, Hopkins. Looking at them, their record, having wins in the lake, it actually, as a 7 seed, it seems a lot better than maybe what I'd expect at a 7 seed. What do we have on Hopkins?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton on them. I did some research on them, and I know they lost 9 players in 2024 and 168 points, which seems like a lot to lose. Um, so, I mean, I don't know if they can recover from that and kind of jump up and be able to, you know, be higher in the mix or not. But just losing from what I've seen and what they lost.
Ted, does the source have anything on Hopkins? I feel like that one's kind of out of left field with, I don't know, just that many
Um,
wins and having wins in the lake.
yeah, so the source said that Hopkins was kind of the like last year's darling, I guess. A couple upsets, 9-6 record, all the things that you said. Um, and the same thing here that Jeff noted. They did lose 9 seniors, and it was most of their scoring. So, um, given the schedule that they'll have to play in the late conference, it will be interesting to see, will they be able to get that production and replace that? So I guess that's the big question mark. But heck of a season last year for them, honestly. You know, 9-6. That's a fantastic year, and yeah, well, I guess we'll see with what Hopkins brings to the table this year.
Coming in at 8, Rogers. We talked a lot about Rogers on the boys' side. Just seems like a town that's, sports is up and coming. They're a growing community. And you look at is this the deepest section in the state? They went 8-7 too. Again, not the easiest schedule in the world. They're playing the likes of Maple Grove. They're in Champlin. They're in your guys' conference. Rogers over 500 record as the 8th seed. This might be the deepest section that we've discussed so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rogers is going to certainly slide up in this mix for sure. I think from the schools that we were talking about up to this point, I think Rogers is going to slide right up. They lost 5 girls. They lost their leading scorer, Olgren, who had 54 points. That said, they do return Moyer, Barnacle, who both signed D2 to CSP, and O'Brien, who just signed D2 to Northern Michigan this past week. They also have a really good goalie who's been around, been their starting goalie for a couple of years now. So yeah, I see Rogers on the rise. They have a number of other good athletes. We've got them on the schedule this year, so I'm excited for that one. We didn't play them last year, but we got them back on the schedule this year. So that'll be fun to get a matchup with Rogers. And I know a lot of those kids. I coach a lot of those kids in the off season on the club team. So I coach club with the Minnesota Yeti. So I coach. There's probably 15 kids from Rogers. So there's a lot of kids up there that are putting in time be outside of the high school season now. So definitely a program on the rise. They do have a new head coach this year. They went through a coaching change. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what that looks like for them as well. But definitely a team on the rise.
Something I think Maple Grove, they had new coaches last year. So I think this is their second season with their new coaching staff. So I think that's something just to it's always worth noting with a team like on the rise that it's like, if it's a staff like brand new, second year, we talked about that with our Minnetonka coaches too, of like, there's a lot of first year probs and I feel like second year you get into the swing of things. So that can always be really advantageous, or detrimental if it doesn't go right either.
Agreed. I think, and you're 100% right. Maple Grove was a first year head coach last year. They lost Haley Karate, who was there for a lot of years in Maple Grove, and then she departed. So
last year 9 seed Breck. I made the joke on the boys' side. I know nothing about this school. They don't want me anywhere near their academics. They wouldn't let me on campus. I'm not built for Breck. So, no, that all jokes aside, Breck, not a team that, kind of Prior Lake we run into all that often. What do you have on Breck? Another team right around that 500 mark last year.
So you're saying they're not one of the schools for the people? They're not the people's school? Is that the deal or what?
I don't know if it's a people's school or not. I just know they wouldn't admit me to their school. I know that for a fact. That's all I know.
In Breck, they lost 16 years from last year. We played them last year, and they're, in my opinion, from what I can tell, they're going to be a rebuilding team this year.
And to round out the section, we've got St. Louis Park and Osseo Park Center at the 10 and 11 mark.
Yeah, I mean, I think St. Louis Park somewhere probably a little higher than OPC. But once again, both of those schools did lose. St. Louis Park lost 8, OPC lost 6. They return a few players each, but boy, it's tough. I mean, it's as soon as you get to a point where you're losing all of your scoring from year to year, it's really tough to rebound and kind of jump into the mix, especially in a section like this. I mean, I think as you stated, it's pretty deep. There's a lot of teams that if things fall their way, stay healthy, good things can happen for sure. So it is a deep section.
Our hopes for those schools is that regardless of like the points they lose, the sheer number of girls they lose, we hope they can just kind of like make it up, and someone's out there, um, recruiting girls to fill in talent or otherwise, come out for the sport, come out to play and just keep the number solid. We just kind of keep seeing these teams hold on to like having their own team.
Right.
That's kind of my hope. It's like you just kind of hope they continue to not have to co-op with teams. It's a great option to have, but my hope is always like, okay, if you're losing this many, let's try to go recruit those eighth graders, recruit those seventh graders, so that by the time they're in high school, you got some numbers to play with and have two teams and give opportunity to girls to learn the game and grow from there.
Absolutely. I think it's so tough to maintain sometimes when if you have a couple of really good groups and then all of a sudden you have a couple even in one age level that there's not as many kids.
Right.
It can be tricky. I mean, and
Right.
one of the things that I'm super proud of when it comes to Chapman Park is, we've been able to maintain those numbers. And, I think a lot of it is it really starts, we try to promote our culture, trying to do things the right way and treat the kids with respect and help them grow and meet them where they're at and, accept mistakes and, all the things that hopefully make them to want to come back. And, every year we see it, you'll have 10, 15 new kids. And then all of a sudden, well, those new kids, all of a sudden their friends are playing the next year because they
Yep.
had such a great experience. So,
Yeah.
and that's what I tell my coaching staff too. I said, if the girl you coached last year, for the most part, if she comes back and then she brings a friend, you're doing something right. So, and I feel like, this year is one of the first years where we're going into a second year with a full contingent of coaches that we had from the year before. So, I mean, I had lost a number of assistant coaches, you know, when one gets married, one has a baby, and on and on and on. So it can get tricky to try to keep that continuity. But I feel like this year we were able to do that, and I'm excited for continue to grow our program.
That's awesome.
As we've discussed, Section 5 has been a huge representative at the state tournament, very competitive state tournament runs, especially over, the most recent history of the tournament in the last few seasons. As we look to 2025, I think there's a few different teams that could potentially come out of this section. How do you think Section 5 will represent at the big dance at the state tournament, come the end of the season?
I think it's an interesting year. If you look across the entire state, there's a lot of the key teams that we had last year who were uh, pretty big powerhouses that lost some pretty significant players. And even Benilde for that matter from this section. But then you look at Lakeville South lost some of their top players, and it kind of goes on and on. Stillwater lost a bunch of kids, and so I feel like this year's a little different where some of the other years you could say, I think this is the team that's going to win it all. And there's pretty good pecking order. I think if there's a number of teams this year, and I think that's a bigger breadth of teams that could possibly get on a run and make some noise, maybe somebody that we don't even expect. So, but as far as our section, you know, we I think we have some competitive teams that can go in and could make some noise if we made it to state for sure.
Totally, I would agree. We're not asking guests this year for to rank the teams in your section or anything like that. We're avoiding that this year. But do you have a bold prediction or a bold take on something about Section 5? Are the answers we've we've received are all over the board, so you can take it any direction you want. But do you have a bold take or a bold prediction about Section 5?
Well, I think, as I kind of laid out a lot of the teams from within the section, I think, there's probably a clear top five within that section, out of all the teams there. And I don't know if I'll make a bold prediction, um, but I think it's a lot of it's going to come down to if teams can stay healthy, and if they can grow together and continue to develop. I know we lost a lot, but if I can do my job and I can develop some of my young players, I feel like, we can be in there. We can make some noise. We have some real solid players that I think we can build around. So, and I'm not saying, hey, I'm putting myself at the top. I wouldn't do that. But I am also going to say that I do believe in my team, my girls, and I know how hard they're working in the off season. So, they're lifting 2 days a week and playing, doing captain's practice the other 2 days, and been doing that since January. So I know they're serious about it. They're getting ready. I believe in them, and I'll do my best to give them every opportunity to have success. So I won't let them outwork me.
Love it. Love it. Jeff, thank you for coming down the alley with us, breaking down Section 5, and being a great source for the section. So, Jeff, good luck, this spring to you and the squad.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys having me on the show.
Thank you. Have a good
All right.
night.
All right, you too.
And thank you to Jeff, head coach of the Champlin Park Rebels, if I'm not mistaken, the Rebels, for coming down the alley, breaking down Section 5 girls lacrosse. We also had Brandon Carlson coming down the alley out of Wayzata, breaking down the boys' side. Two awesome guests to break down both sides of the section. Girls, I've got like the most recent memory as I was going through, and I'm like, every team is 500 or better. Like even like the eighth team in the section. Like I some of the teams I did not expect that. Record wise and whatnot. I did that catch you guys off guard too? I don't know. That just caught me off guard a little bit.
I knew that Section 5 was a good section for both boys and girls, or maybe even a great section, you could say. But I also didn't realize how deep the section was with some of like maybe what we would call dark horse or middle of the pack teams. Maybe they don't view themselves that way, which is fine. But like you said, some of these teams that aren't like even maybe talked about a lot or on the radar are, like you said, 9-7, 10-6, or what, I don't know, 10-5, like really good seasons, honestly. Like, and a lot of them play tough schedules. That this section, has a mixture of some Northwest Suburban, some Lake Conference, some private schools that can kind of do their thing with their schedule. So, I agree. It's a deep section, both boys and girls.
Should we jump into picks?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'll start because I've been
Are we going
thinking about
girl?
this. I've been taking notes. Let's start with girls
Okay.
because Katie was here for the girls. Girls is fresh. 1-4, starting at the top. I don't know if that's how we usually do it or not.
We usually go 4-1.
All right,
We
let's go
usually go
4.
4 to
Let's
1.
go 4-1. Let's go 4-1. So I'll start at the bottom, and the bottom on the girls' side is starting with a sleeper. He our guest indicated and kind of confirmed my hutch, my hitch, my
Hunch.
hunch,
Your hitch.
hunch,
Hitch move. Hitch move.
hitch, the hitch move. Nope, my hunch. Rogers. I think Rogers is becoming a sports town. I think Rogers is becoming a lacrosse town. I could totally be wrong about that. I could be making that up. It's just the hunch that I'm getting as we talk lacrosse with more people. Rogers is my 4. BSM is my 3. Champlin is my 2. Maple Grove is my 1.
I almost went the exact same,
All right.
except my 4 is Wayzata, and everything else is the same.
Wayzata at 4, BSM at 3, right?
Yep.
Champlin Park at 2 and Maple Grove at 1.
Yep.
All right. I have similar teams but different rankings. I have Wayzata at 4. I have Champlin Park at 3. I have BSM at 2 and Maple Grove at 1. So
Wow.
looks like we all have Maple Grove.
The curse could be, we're going to find out if the
Yeah.
DTA curse is alive in section 4. Me, I thought I was early. I thought I was being smart about picking the Crimson. We didn't discuss this.
So
We're all getting vibes about Maple Grove on the girls' side right now.
I think, at least for me, just kind of hearing about all these teams, a lot of these teams, even the ones in this top 4, aside from maybe Maple Grove, like lost a lot of seniors, and it seemed like maybe they had the least amount of turnover. So, um, and they were really good. I mean, they were 11-3, 11-3-1 last year too. So, yeah, they get the bump. I think we all kind of saw that. But as mentioned, BSM, the champs until someone beats them, and it
Right.
felt weird for like I put them at 2, but it's like even not putting them at 1 seems like weird, and like
It felt dirty.
it felt dirty. They had like the ultimate like prove us wrong like 2 years ago when like we just didn't talk about them and we're just like yeah whatever and like you know ended up winning the state tournament. Like not only like got in the top 4 of their section, not only won their section, won the state tournament, the whole thing. And like that was epic just across the board. Like, as we've been doing these posts and these picks, we get a lot of feedback from players and coaches like, I can't believe you didn't think we're a top 4 team or you keep sleeping on our team. And it's like, hey, like I just go off the information that I have and like prove us wrong because I didn't hear shit from BSM girls 2023. And then the first time I heard from them was when they're like, hey, check out this plaque, first place state tournament. And so like I mad respect to that program and Anna and Kara over there for what they've done with the Red Knights.
Over to the boys. I can start because I thought I was being bold with my picks on the girls' side. Apparently not. So maybe I'm feeling a little bold in section 5. I don't know if these will be bold. I feel like I'm being bold, but maybe
Mine's
not.
not bold. I don't think mine's bold at all
All right.
for the boys. So it'll
PMAC,
be interesting what you have.
go ahead.
My 4, Hopkins at 4, new coach, good vibes. I don't know. Rogers, the new lacrosse town, at 3, Wayzata at 2, because you can't knock off the BSM boys. Exactly what we're talking about on the girls' side, but it's holding more true for me on the boys' side. Like they I they lose less for me. So Benel at 1. What do you guys got?
I said almost the same. Maple Grove at 4, Rogers at 3, Wayzata at 2, BSM at 1.
Yeah, I don't think that's bold. I think that's in line.
It's like pretty standard.
Yeah, that's standard. Yeah, I would agree.
Um, so maybe I'm bold here.
What do you got?
Got Rogers at 4. I got Maple Grove at 3. I have BSM at 2. I have
Oh,
Zeta at 1.
You're taking BSM off the
yeah.
board right off the hop.
Yeah, I someone has to be controversial. And someone has to be bold and I think I like what Wayzata's got. I think
I agree.
it's less I think it's less about BSM here and more about Wayzata for me. And it could be recency bias talking to the coach. But Coach Brandon when we interviewed him, he pumped up BSM pretty high too. So like it wasn't like he just was like only talking and pumping up his own team.
For sure.
Um, I think that Wayzata team last year we were talking about them returning all those 2025s. And now like they're returning them again as starters as
Yeah.
seniors. I just for me with Wayzata boys, it's more of like this is kind of feels like the last, not the last dance for them, but this group has been together for 3 years now. And like they finally, this is kind of their last shot to get through Benilde. So like maybe the momentum will be on their side. But like you said, I mean, BSM boys have dominated the state, the section, the whatever for years. And so it's going to be a tall task, but I have a good feeling about the Wayzata boys program going into 2025.
Love the boldness. Love the boldness. Um, that's section 5. That is section 5. Next week we'll be breaking down Katie and I's section 6, the section of death. We've got a couple of great guests that I'm really excited to interview. We haven't interviewed them yet. So I'm really excited to break it down with a couple of guests. One is a new guest, hasn't been on the podcast before. Anything as we close out here, last shout out to the Wayzata coach. Check out the GoFundMe for his wife, and the battle that they're in right now. If you can support them, that's a great cause. Anything else to close this one out?
No, I think Section 5 is a fun section, a lot of really good teams. And Section 6 will be a great follow-up to Section 5.
Thanks for riding with us. We will see you next week.
Are you looking for a dedicated partner for your lacrosse needs? ES Lacrosse has got you covered. If you're brand new to the game, a seasoned vet, or a dedicated lacrosse parent, ES Lacrosse is the go-to partner for Minnesota lacrosse and DTA Nation. Whether you need new gear, a restringing of your current setup, custom uniforms or apparel for your team, or one of their awesome starter sets for your brand new lacrosse player, the selection, expertise, and service at ES Lacrosse is unmatched. You can visit them in store at one of their 3 metro locations in Woodbury, Chanhassen, and Vadnais Heights, or visit them online at eslacrosse.com. Hey, DTA Nation, with the spring season right around the corner, that means it's time to start planning those grad parties. Old Southern Barbecue has great catering options for your senior. You can go with the barbecue staples like wings, ribs, or barbecue sandwich sliders, but they even have an incredible mac and cheese bar option as well. Congrats to all the seniors from DTA and OSB as you head into the final chapter, and go to oldsoutherncatering.com to get your grad party planning underway. And make sure to tell them that DTA sent you.